Hey everybody, today is May 23rd, so we'll be looking at May 22nd's MTG stocks. So, on here we can see there are quite a few price increases, and see, like there's 500% and 200 and 300%. So it's kind of interesting to see all the price increases still. The ones that I want to kind of look at today, though, is Complicate, and we'll be looking at Orange Chant. These are a little bit older cards, so I thought it'd be interesting to see two old cards. So, our first one here is Complicate. Complicate went from 57 cents to 385. And Complicate is a two colorless blue instant that allows you to counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. It also has cycling, two colorless, and a blue. And cycling is where you pay two colorless and a blue for this card, you discard this card, and you draw a card. And then whenever you cycle it, you may counter target spell unless its controller pays one colorless. So it's a little versatile. If someone has up one or two mana, and you're like, okay, I really need to make sure this thing gets countered, then you can use its usual effect, counter that spell. Well, more than likely counter that spell as long as they can't pay 3. Now, the other thing, though, is that if they have no mana up and you're pretty certain that they aren't going to have mana up somehow, then you can just be like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and cycle this card for the exact same amount that it would be to counter that spell, but you also get to, I guess, loot, which is, discard this card and, well, actually, you just get to draw a card, basically, because you're discarding this card. So basically, it's a 3 colorless counter target spell, draw a card, as long as they don't have mana up. So, pretty good. I mean, like, it's versatile enough that I think in general it's good. But I assume here, because this makes a lot of sense, that the main reason this card went up, it seems like a lot of cards like this are going up, and I've talked about this before, but it's a girl, Gavi. So Gavi basically, I won't go too much in detail because we talked about this probably too many times, but two colorless, blue, red, white, legendary creature, human shaman, 2/5. You may pay 0 rather than pay the cycling cost of the first card you cycle each turn, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur cat creature token. So basically, Gavi is the cycling card. She's very, very, very good. And having Complicate or other cards like Complicate allows you to basically counter a spell, draw a card for 0. And then if you can cycle again or draw another card that turn, then you get to make a token as well. So Gavi's making all these cycling cards very, very good, especially cycling cards that get a benefit when you cycle them instead of just, some cycling cards will just be like, just cycle this card and you get nothing out of it except for just looting, basically. But yeah, so Gavi's pretty good. I think people like her quite a bit. I do. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that this Complicate card didn't go up prior to this, but I guess that's fine. So just weird to me. But whatever. Yeah, that's probably it for that card. So let's go to our second card, which is Orange Chant. Orange Chant went from $12.50 to $29.95. So a pretty big price increase. And Orange Chant cost white, so just 1 white mana. It's an instant, and also has a kicker cost of white. If you don't know what kicker is, it's when you may pay an additional amount of mana as you cast a spell. So in this case, if you want to, you can pay an additional white, and it usually gets some sort of benefit. Well, I guess always would get a benefit because it wouldn't make much sense otherwise. So this card, target player can't cast spells this turn. If it was kicked, creatures can't attack this turn. So, kind of interesting effect here. This, the first ability always happens. So you don't have to pay the kicker cost, and that first ability, the target player can't cast spells this turn. So that's always going to happen regardless if you pay the kicker. But then the second part is kind of like an extra benefit if you do have that extra white mana around, or if you need that extra white mana to use it. So, I guess let's go ahead and talk about the, good part of this card and the target player can't cast spells this turn. If there's another card that's like this, and that card is called Silence. Silence is a white mana as well. Instant speed, and your opponents can't cast spells this turn. So in some senses it could be better because you're not targeting an opponent. Also, it is much cheaper, around $3 or $4. Now, I'm going to attribute Orum's Chant price mostly for the fact that it is old and it's never had a reprint except for like a judge gift. So those usually judge gift cards are just super expensive anyways. They're always going to be more expensive. So I'm going to attribute a lot of its price to just being old, probably being bought out. And I mean, it's having a good effect as well. But Silence is really good because if you're a commander player, Silence affects everybody. Now, Orum's Chant, since it's a target player, you can only affect one person, and commander, when you have 3 opponents, only targeting down one opponent's kind of like eh. But that's just kind of a comparison card. But the good thing about Orum's Chant is that it's really, really good for combos. So if you have like an infinite combo, and you really want to make sure that infinite combo goes off, plays Orum's Chant on a player, and then you can probably get your infinite combo off. That's probably more for 1v1, less so commander. You can still do it, but it's just less likely to go off. And I guess the other ability, the kicker cost, could still be pretty good because you can make this flexible in the sense of if someone has like 100 tokens or infinity tokens, you can just do Orum's Chant, make sure none of them can attack, and then there you go. You can do that. You can do that as well. That is a added benefit, I believe. That's one reason why I do like Orum's Chant a little over Silence, because it's a little bit more flexible. But like I said, Silence is probably better. Silence is better if you have an infinite combo. Orum's Chant is probably better if you just are trying to lock down a person, or you're trying to make sure that you don't die through combat in EDH standards, EDH. But the other thing is, so you could do the infinite combos, but I got one card I just want to kind of highlight that could be really good for this is a card called Omniscience. Omniscience is a 7 colorless blue card. So you'd have to at least be in Azorius colors to play this, at least in Commander. But if you had Orum's Chant, you play it. Now the target opponent can't play spells on your turn, and this could be good if if someone is heavy blue, then you can make sure that they can't counter your Omniscience. If they are, maybe heavy white or green, and you're worried about enchantment destroying abilities or effects, then you can potentially do that on them, so you can actually get your Omniscience out and use it for a turn. But anyway, so Omniscience, it costs, its converted mana cost here is 10, which is huge. But you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. So, with Omniscience and Orum's Chant, or Silence would probably be better in this case for EDH, but either way, it could be very, very good. That way you can actually get your Omniscience out and use it. And it's not an infinite combo, unless it goes into one, I guess. But it allows you to really pull ahead or potentially win the game if you have a card like this out. So, those kind of effects in general, like the Orum's Chant or Silence, those effects are very, very good if you are trying to get out combos or just very big cards and you're scared that they won't go off. So, pretty neat cards, pretty neat ideas. So, from there, we're going to go ahead and go into our Commander of the Night, which shall be Zaxara the Exemplary. Zaxara is a 1 colorless black, green, blue card. It is a legendary creature, Nightmare Hydra. It's a 2/3 Death Touch. You can tap it to add 2 mana of any one color. So it has some mana ramp on it. As a commander, I guess it's kind of nice to have it. I don't think it's super necessary, but it makes sense for this card probably. Because whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, you create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token, then put X +1/+1 counters on it. So, since this is potentially a Hydra tribal, because you're going to make Hydras, and it is a Hydra itself, it's having that mana ramp can be nice. And then also, you could also make this a +1/+1 counter deck in general, or etc. But the only thing I'm semi-disappointed in this card for is that it is Sultai, and I do like Sultai. It's just more of with Hydras. I feel like there are a lot more red Hydras than there are black or blue Hydras. But regardless, you know, I guess like Intermer or Jund, it would be it'd be pretty interesting to see. But I guess it is kind of neat to see a Sultai tribal, and I guess to highlight the Sultai a little bit more. So of course, you know, there you always just put in a whole bunch of green Hydras, and then you can just put out more Hydras and pay X cost and blah blah blah. But the cool thing that you could do is, since you are in Sultai and you have access to that blue and black, you could make a Hydra deck, but in addition, you can kind of do a little bit more milling because of that blue and black. So I figured, like, if we can't go the more traditional Hydra route of beating people up and putting out a lot of Hydras and etc. by having that red in there, or I guess, you know, a lot of people do like mono green Hydras, but for some reason I always kind of associate Hydras with red and green because I guess there are a few in both. But anyways, I thought it'd been interesting to go for a more mill Hydra since we have access to those colors now. So one kind of card that I thought was interesting is called Mind Grind. Mind Grind is a X blue black sorcery, and each opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal X land cards, then puts all cards revealed this way into their graveyard. X can't be 0. So what's interesting about this is that you know, let's say, since you're going to probably be mana ramping a lot in Sultai anyways, and you have a lot of Hydras, so you're going to want to mana ramp in that sense as well. You know, let's say that you can put this out. Maybe you could put 6 into it. 6 into X, I should say. So that means it's 8 mana total. You pay 6. And now you have each person milling, well, at minimum 6, but you're probably going to get more around 15 to 20 if we go on a basis of there's like every 1 in 3 cards is a land, then somewhere between like 15 and 20, maybe. But so it's kind of neat when you think about that. It's like, oh, well, the reason why this card works so well is that Mind Grind has an X in its cost, and with Zaxara, if you play it, that means you are getting a 0/0 Hydra token with 6+1/+1 counters on it. So not only are you milling people, you're also creating creatures with Zaxara. So I think it's kind of like, I think it's kind of a neat idea that you could do. I'm not saying there's a ton of these types of cards, but I feel like there's very good ways to do this. And I guess kind of, I wasn't going to highlight this card only because it seems very obvious in some sense. There's a puppy. But one card that's very, very good for the Sultai deck here, he has entered. The puppy has entered. Come here. Come here, puppy. Oh, we have the puppy. All right. So, he just seems like, please let me go. Please, I'll do anything. All right, puppy, you can go. So one thing you can do with this is, all right, back to track here, is the one card I was gonna kind of talk about, and I'm not gonna make this my synergy card. I guess it is sort of a synergy card because it's very good. But Villainous Wealth. Villainous Wealth. This is I guess in the Commander 2020 precon, and so is Zaxara. So that's why they work well together. Is I guess they're all kind of in the same deck, so it makes sense. But anyways, Villainous Wealth, X black green blue. And by the way, this is the only X black green blue apparently. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything else, so I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like. What is a sorcery? Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with converted mana cost X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. So, if you put, 7 into X and you have black, green, blue, that means that you get to exile X cards from target opponent, and you can put any number of spells that cost 7 or less from that exile. So this is good in two senses. So if you're doing a mill deck, you'd be technically milling 7 cards. The other good thing about this is that they have shufflers, like they have something that allows them to shuffle back into their deck, then Villainous Wealth will exile that card, and it'll make it so they can't keep doing that, and that's a good way to make sure that you can get your mill out, basically. But regardless, I mean, that's kind of like the idea. If you do the Mind Grind, and then they have something that shuffles, use Villainous Wealth next, if you have enough mana. Yeah, so, I mean, and then, of course, with Zaxara, then you have Villainous Wealth's X cost go off, and you make another Hydra. So I think it's kind of a neat idea to go more the route of doing this mill / stealing stuff for your opponent's deck kind of build Hydra deck. So pretty neat. I like, you know, I wish we could either change colors in cards so that I could make a Jund version of this as well, or whatever. But it's kind of interesting when you're given these specific colors. You're like, okay, you know, you could go full Hydra on this, and that makes sense. But I think with those colors presented, what other things can you do with that card? And, you know, Sultai can do really well with milling or just graveyard decks in general. So there's a good ways to do that. So it's neat it is neat to go beyond, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. But let's go ahead and I think we've talked enough about that. Let's go ahead and get into our random cards of the night as always. Random card number 1 is Brainstorm. Wow. Brainstorm is a just blue, instant, and draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. This, you know, a lot of people like this in commander decks. I generally don't care that much, only because it is very good and you need specific decks for it, but I'm like, I don't generally want to use that slot in my deck. So I usually stay away from these kind of effects, even though it is probably very powerful. But for me, I'd just rather have, I don't know, something. It's very powerful in the sense of like making your deck a little bit more cohesive, I guess. But I guess for me, I'd rather have bigger cards or more creatures or something. But I guess as a card that would sort of help would probably be like miracle cards. Miracle cards would be very good if you have a miracle deck. Let's see here. I can't remember the name. There's a like an extra turn miracle card. Don't remember what the name is. I'll put it up on the screen, but basically it's a miracle card is if it's the first card you've drawn this turn, then you can pay its miracle cost instead. And if you do, well, yeah, so like basically, so if it's usually a reduced cost, which makes sense. So you would, for instance, you would brainstorm, put the card that you want on top of your deck. So then when it comes down to your next turn, you will draw it. It'll be the first card you've drawn that turn, and then you would pay its miracle cost, and you would get a extra turn. I want to say it's Temporal Mastery. I guess we'll see if my past self is actually correct or not. I feel like Temporal Mastery is just an extra turn card. I don't think it's the miracle extra turn card. But whatever, regardless. Yeah, and the other good thing about Brainstorm, since it is instant, you can actually do this to the turn before. So in that case, you can just get an extra turn for 1 mana. Or you can set up your extra turn for 1 mana a lot easier. So, you know, if you have the deck for it, I would suggest it. But I want to just put this as a staple card generally, just because it's basically, yeah. If you're EDH, CEDH, I should say. If you're CEDH, then it's probably fine. But otherwise, yeah. All right, let's go and go to our random card number 2, which is Once Upon a Time. So Once Upon a Time, this card is kind of interesting because this was worth quite a bit. But I guess we'll first get into this. Once Upon a Time is a 1 colorless green instant. If this spell is the first spell you've cast this game, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So that seems pretty good. 0 mana, able to play a spell if it's the first one you cast. You know, if you're an EDH, that's less likely, but if you're in another deck and you put 2 to 4 of these in your deck, then you have a pretty okay chance to actually get that ability off, especially in a 60-card deck. But its actual ability is, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. This basically allows you to, if this is in your hand and you only have like 1 or 2 lands, Or if you need to fix your mana in some case, you can be like, all right, I'm going to take the land that's out of there, and that's going to be a really good way to, like if you had a really, really good hand, you have Once Upon a Time in it, but you only have like one land in it, then that allows you to take that risk a little bit easier. Now, of course, the other thing you can do with it is just get a really good creature card and do something with that. Or in late game, if you just really need a creature card, you can cast Once Upon a Time, get a creature card for 2 mana, blah, blah, blah. So it's not bad. It's pretty good. And I should say, it's probably a little bit better than not bad, because it's been banned in Standard, banned in Pioneer, banned in Modern, and Historic too, I guess. But so it's been banned pretty hard, because it was a really good card, and it was worth quite a bit of money. I think it's around $20-something quite a while ago, but now it's worth like a couple. So yeah, so it's not bad at Commander, but I mean, there's a lot of effects that are like this, so it's not like a huge deal either. So yeah, I don't really have like a great synergy card for this. Let's say you really need a finisher or something, and you cast Once Upon a Time, and it's turn like 8, and you find the almighty Avenger of Zendikar. Because there's always Avenger of Zendikar, right? Why wouldn't you put Avenger of Zendikar out? Or whatever. Yeah, sure, whatever, that's fine. But it allows you to get, a creature out in later game. So it is kind of nice still to have it. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.